Here we are, Kenny. We're hot, man. All 6 already. 6 hot. 6 watching.
I'm still sharing it around.
Yeah, let me share it around. Brian is getting his stuff set up for those who've been anticipating watching Brian. I'm waiting for him to give me the thumbs up, him or Jacob. Meanwhile, we're going to go ahead and share this around a little bit. This is going to be a fun one, guys. I hope folks can watch, man. I hope folks can watch. Here we go. I'll just share that. Brian, can you hear us okay, buddy? You get your audio worked out? Okay, I think so. All right, let's get this baby shared. Michael just shared it.
All righty.
Yeah, I'm going to get a couple Michigan groups here. Yeah, let's get a Michigan buck pole. Be a good one. All right. Brian, can you hear us?
I can hear you loud and clear, my friend.
Loud and clear. Great.
Yep.
Thanks for joining us. I saw your lovely bride there in the background. She doesn't have to be camera shy. Hi, Doris.
Hi.
It's going to be 50 years. It's going to be 50 years that she's been my bride.
Nice. I just celebrated 32.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. So listen, here we go, guys. We'll give it a minute. We'll get a couple of Brian, before we really dive in, we're going to let a few more people jump on because this is truly live. First of all, I want to say thanks for joining us. We're going to cover a little bit of business, so to speak, before we get into the heart of the conversations. Brian, talking about your work and the greatness that I believe it is. And we'll kick it off, but and then, like I say, we're anxious. I've been talking about this for a long time. So before we dive all the way in, we'll talk a little bit about some new developments and some good stuff with the ABTA, Kenny, huh? Some of the stuff that we've been working on today, and and I guess just to brief that a little bit, guys, is there's a lot in the works with the ABTA right now, Kenny, under Kenny's leadership, and a whole lot of supporting cast members. There's some really neat things going on that some of it you won't really notice externally, in terms of big obvious things, but you'll notice it in the improvements and the way we approach certain things and just the overall betterment and strengthening of the organization as a whole. But one of the things that you'll see externally is member benefits. So if you want to be as a member of the American Blood Trackers Association, we're working on, what does that mean for you other than you're a member of a great organization and you have access and knowledge just like you do on a lot of things. But, what more do you get? And one of the things that we worked on today is a member benefits committee. So that committee is up and taken off. And one of what that brings us today is this live stream being sponsored by Seamus Calahulas and and Mullins Dog Training, right, Kenny?
Yes.
And yeah, here's the script that we floated around. Tonight's podcast brought to you by Schmavis Catahoula's. Sorry, Lyle. Schmavis Catahoula's and Mullins Dog Training, proud members and sponsors, offering exclusive discounts to our ABTA members. So what that means, if you're an ABTA member and you leverage or utilize any of the service provided by Mullins Dog Tracking or Schmavis Catahoula's, there are certain discounts associated with them just by being an ABTA member. And there will be more of that to come. But this is kind of the inaugural launch. This is literally hours old. But just one of the things that we're trying to do to just get better or improve the public engagement and member benefits. Kenny, you want any additional comments or clarifications on that?
No, you pretty much nailed it. I mean, we formed this committee this morning.
Yes.
And everyone hit the ground running and taking big strides to get the ball rolling. I mean, it's definitely a good thing. Real quick, Matt, Dylan is asking, or was it Dylan? Where's it at? Yes, Dylan is asking if.
Hold on. I didn't get my comments up. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, he's asking if it's being shared to YouTube.
Shoot. No, I forgot to link to YouTube. I'll upload the video to YouTube though.
That sounds good. Thank you.
I'll get it uploaded, but it's not. Doggone it, it's not being shared live right now. Sorry about that, Dylan. I'll get it up there though tonight.
Okay. But yeah, lots of things in the works. Lyle, remember to give a shout out to Lyle Avis. He really grabbed the bull by the horns, and and everyone really, but Lyle.
Oh yeah.
He volunteered as the chairman of the committee. He just doesn't know it yet.
Yeah, well,
I guess he does now.
He does now. He certainly did volunteer just by virtue of taking absolute command of it. And in all seriousness, it was great. I mean, we've already got centralized documents shared, and I mean, yeah, well done, Lyle. And yes, Lyle, I saw your comments. I nailed it the second time. Thanks, dude. Schmavis Catahoula. So yeah, a lot of good stuff, and like I said, there's more to come, and there's other things, just really, really good stuff going on, and I'm pretty excited about it, frankly.
Yeah. So we actually formed 3 committees today: a testing committee, which is going to be handling research and development, document, taking care of the document management. Basically, they're going to be taking over the reviewing of the test lines and all, just a lot. The progression of the judges. That's going to be a good committee.
I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, Ethan Young is heading that up as the chairman of that committee, and then we have the events committee, which Kayla is putting that together now, or already has. So it's pretty good stuff. We actually have a board meeting after we're done tonight with going over some more stuff after the Florida event.
Yep, for sure. A lot of good stuff. I'm sorry, I'm sharing this out too. So, yeah, a lot of really good stuff. And there's just increased all of it out of necessity, for just as the organization continues to grow, and as you continue to grow, you've got to manage that growth. And it's all great stuff.
Oh yeah, yep,
great stuff. So before we dive in, I got one more thing, Kenny. Two more things. Before we let's do the first one. Do you want to share with the viewers and listeners what you spent 2.5, nearly 3 hours of your life doing the other day? You want to grease those skids with Lindsay?
Oh, with the podcast.
With the podcast, yeah.
Yeah. That was One Track Mind podcast, I believe it is. Sorry
Yep.
if I'm. I was looking at some of the comments. I need to turn them off, but yeah, it was Lindsay and Matt. You know, I spoke with them regarding training, and I believe it went live today. She texted me this morning. I haven't had a
Okay.
chance to check it out.
Yeah, I haven't either.
Yeah,
But
I'm
anyway,
actually
good.
I'm pretty excited about their podcast. You know, and I told them this on the podcast, or maybe it was prior to or after. You know, they're both of them are newer to tracking than some people. And I believe Matt's been doing it a year. And don't let that discredit the podcast.
No,
I do
not
want
at
to say
all.
that, you know, they have some knowledge. They are getting the right people on. I'm not saying I'm the right person, but they're getting the right people
Sure.
on. Great topics, and sometimes having fresher outlook at things can help. And
Yeah,
like
for
Matt
sure.
Matt told me the day we did the podcast, that he's also doing this so that he can gain more from it. And
Sure.
as long as I've been tracking, I take away something from every podcast, every live stream, every event we go to. I take away something from it.
And we should be looking for that. We've talked about that a million times. There's something there. We should be looking for something. And, if you really want to continue to, in the interest of continuous growth and development. So I'm with you. They're doing a great job with it. It's very well done. It intimidates me about my little hobby podcast, but those guys, Matt's a professional at it, and it's great content, man. It really is. I've really enjoyed the ones that they've got out there now. So, One Track Mind, guys, be sure you check that out on all your podcast platforms. It's on. She posted on YouTube all the time too. So,
yeah, and
yep.
I did invite them to come on with us. So
yes, absolutely.
That's coming.
Yep. That'll be great. All right, real quick before we dive into the heart of why we're here with Brian's anatomically brilliant sculptures in the background. Let's we'll do a more in-depth of a Florida event recap on next week's stream when we start our training series. Just before we start the training series, but how'd it go, man? Any highlights, lowlights you want to talk about for the Florida event?
Yeah, it went good. I'm not gonna lie, we were a little behind on planning for that event, just because we were so busy with tracking season. Of course,
Yeah.
I was busy still with hurricane cleanup stuff, and we just let it creep up on us too fast. However, it turned out great. I believe we administered 27 tests, and a lot of those were seasoned and finished tests.
Nice.
Yeah, it was good. We actually had Josie Bozeman. I believe she's 14. I may be wrong, but I believe she's 14. She actually has had her dog about a year now. Actually, she won it in an auction at an event a year ago, and that she trained it herself, and she passed the finish test this weekend.
She passed the finish test.
Yes.
14-year-old passed the finish test on a dog she got a year ago at auction.
Yes.
That is fantastic. There's another one that I want to talk to.
Oh yeah. We have to get her on. She's
yeah.
So it's pretty exciting stuff. We had
really exciting stuff.
We had Duval Catahoula's there speaking. Lyle Avis with Schmavis Catahoula's there speaking. I'm sorry. It was an on-lead finish test at that, Matt. And she primarily tracked off-lead. So, but it was a good event. I want to say, honestly, it was probably the most audience participation throughout the day out of any seminar that we've had that I've even been to. It was 100% audience participation throughout it.
Then that's when it's good, as long as the participation isn't throwing tomatoes at you.
Yeah, especially we started almost 2 hours late. Just things got behind with the testing, but that's part of it.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I look forward to next week's stream when we dive into that a little bit more, for sure. Yeah. But and then and guys, next week too, before we get into Brian, we're going to start the training series. So those of you who have been interested in training content, we're going to start our multi-part training series. So be sure you're tuning in and planning time for that to watch it. So that'll be a lot of fun. So.
Yep.
But tonight, we are joined by the anatomy hunter, Brian Johnson. Many of you will recognize Brian's work. We're starting to see your stuff start to circulate more through all of the tracking pages and network trackers sharing your stuff around now with your Anatomy Hunter Facebook presence now that is starting to get out. Now, many of you will recognize Brian. We've all seen the video at some point in time where there's a deer carcass with the hide and muscles cut away down to the ribs, and we can see the internal, and we're inflating lungs. There's a couple of videos out there that have been out for a few years. Thanks, Kenny. So this is Brian. I became aware of Brian's work. Now I knew that lung video showing how the lungs truly envelop the entire chest cavity and there is no void and all of the things. But I didn't realize it was Brian Johnson. I became aware of Brian's work and really became enamored with it when, Brian, you were a guest on the Outdoor Drive podcast. That's Trevor Berwick and Steve Mardick out of Connecticut, the Outdoor Drive. I was also a guest in their podcast talking tracking. And when I saw you on a guest, I immediately started to look you up and do more, learn more about you and your work and became immediately enamored with it, because Kenny knows I'm kind of a nerd that way. And anatomy, I think, is critically important. And the nice thing about it is, at the ABTA, it's about education and training and testing. And education is not just in educating on how to run a dog on a track, or how to prepare for a test. The education is all encompassing, talking about shot placement, what hunters can do to not have to call an ABTA dog tracker or any other dog tracker, so your work fits perfectly into, the mission of the ABTA in its full scope of education. So I've rambled an awful lot, so I'll stop, Brian, and kind of let you introduce yourself and tell us about your work, and then we'll get into, we'll let the conversation evolve on its own merit. And I'll have a lot of questions. I'm already seeing sculptures. I see one over your shoulder right now. I want you to pull up later. But Brian, go ahead and introduce yourself, buddy, and tell us about who you are and what you do and your mission.
Well, I tried. One of my goals is to not talk about myself because I talk too much and I want to talk about what I'm trying to accomplish, not about me. My background is I'm just 68 years old. I started when I was 18 years old. I got a taxidermy apprenticeship from Reinhardt School of Taxidermy. And long story short, I started in taxidermy. I then started sculpturing animals because way back in the 70s, the quality of the sculptures back then were pretty near non-existent. So then, in other words, the quality wasn't very good. They weren't even made out of foam. They're made out of paper, believe it or not, and a red rosin paper. And so I started sculpturing my own. And that literally, this goes back to probably 1976, 78, somewhere in there. And it's been that long that I've been studying animals, but I've been studying them from a taxidermist standpoint, from a taxidermy sculptor standpoint of making him there. And then as well as being a hunter, then I started internally looking at why this animal died, where it was hit. And so that process, I've been dealing with this for a long, long, long time. But then what happened is about, I don't know, maybe 8-10 years ago, I came up with an idea that I had patented. And the patent is such, and it's issued, that I can tell you where the perfect kill shot is on a deer, no matter how high you're in a tree, or no matter what angle the animal is turned.
Yep.
And it was from there. And then I presented it to him at this time, since I said I started with, actually, I didn't say, but I was with Reinhardt in my taxidermy industry, and I started doing taxidermy sculptures. I then sold my taxidermy business, went to work for Reinhardt, doing sculptures there. And long story short, I had this patent idea, and Reinhardt was not interested in it because it's very complex. It's not a user-friendly thing per se. So they declined it. I'm fanatic on this because, like I say, my goal is to see deer killed and not wounded, which is a whole other story. What my motive is and why that is. Why we raise deer, we raised them in our house. I feed deer that I give names to here every day, and yet I kill deer, but they're very precious to me, and I want them killed. I don't want them wounded. Anyway, long story short, I started Masterpiece Archery Targets while I was still working with Reinhardt, and this is an open story. And because I'm not a business guy at all. In fact, everything I'm doing in Anatomy Hunter has cost me, I don't know, maybe $200,000 out of my own pocket. I'm not doing this to make money at all. But long story short, I ended up signing a contract with them, and I sold my patent to them. And then what happened is I was all excited that they were going to take the patent now and we're going to do something with it, which is what I wanted all along, and they didn't. So I basically, like if you had a house that you loved and you had to sell it and it's gone, and somebody doesn't do the house the way you'd want them to, but it's not yours anymore, right? So what happened is I let the dream of what the perfect kill shot patent would accomplish, I had to let it die in my heart, because otherwise it would torment me. Well, what happened is I was out in Montana hunting, and I had the best experience with an elk. It's a long story. It is absolutely fantastic. But the bottom line was I made a very good double lung shot on the elk. I've got it on video. I'm just waiting for him to go down. I'm basically doing a dance. I'm so excited. It was a raghorn buck bull, but to me, that's just huge. That for me to get an elk of any sort. Long story short, I couldn't find him. And I ended up paying the people that I hunted with were in the Forest Service there. I said, if you could find it, I'd pay you. What did I say, Doris? 2,000. What did I say I'd pay him? I forget. How much? We ended up paying them $2,000 if they could find this elk. And it wasn't because it was a trophy bull. It was just a raghorn. The reason it meant so much to me, and I was crying in their offices, I needed to know, how could I make that shot and it not die? And it was right out in the open after 100 yards. There's no place for it to go and hide. I couldn't believe it. So is this one of these stories that I've read about or I've heard about that happened? So I literally was almost like possessed in a good way to find out. And wouldn't you know it, it's a long, beautiful story, but they found the elk. I got the rack sent back to me. I got to go back 2 years later this last fall, because it takes a long time to get a tag in Montana now. And they told me where the skeleton was. And the 2 years later, not only do I have the bones, some of the meat was still on the bones, if you could believe that or not. And what had happened is my broadhead broke. When I got my arrow, I only had 2 blades left on it. And I theorized why that happened. And I found the rib exactly what I thought I believe it proved what it was, that I was right. So obviously that's a big thing to me. But anyway, as a result of all of that, my wife and I are born again Christians, and I don't expect anybody to believe the religious side, but we believe God led us to start the Anatomy Hunter. So I went to Reinhardt, who I'm still working with, and I asked for 2 years off. And I went to ask 2 years off. He interrupted me and said, because of COVID, obviously COVID affected America financially, many businesses. But as a result of that, he interrupted me and said, I want to give you 2 years off. I'm going to knock your salary way down so they can save money, but you can go do what you want. And so they wanted me to go have fun. But instead, I spent 2 years trying to establish the Anatomy Hunter. And that would have been, my 2 years is up, and I'm back sculpturing for Reinhardt right now. So, but we're very excited where it's going. And the end result of what this is all about is, my goal is to have 150,000 deer a year that are not harvested. Instead, I want them harvested and the meat put in the freezers of American hunters' families, not going on the neighbor's property and dying and feeding families of coyotes. That's kind of my jingle, my saying there on that. That's what my goal is. So all the things I'm teaching, all the things I'm saying, that's where it's at. And that's where you guys are my heroes, because you are actually out there doing it and you have got the knowledge that I am needing. Because as much as I've done all this, guys, I still don't have near the knowledge of what you guys have, because one of my goals is the Perfect Kill Shot Documentation Project, where I want 1,000 animals that are shot on video. And your situation will be a little bit different, but it's totally documented where the arrow went in, where the arrow came out, what the organs hit, counting the ribs. I mean, it's very detailed, but when it's all said and done, it's going to form a library that people can go online when they shoot a deer in a certain spot. They could actually watch videos where deer are shot in those spots. They could see how long it took it to die, what the blood trail was like, all the details, everything there. And then I'm going to be bringing some new things to the industry, like counting the ribs, because again, you say you hit them all, I hit them in the lungs, I hit them in the liver. Where? We have to go by the ribs. That's a foundational point that I teach, that we have to count them to know where they're at. And the height in a tree, the distance out, so we have the exact angles. And one of the other things that I'm going to be hopefully bringing a change in the archery industry is this. When you're dealing, because everything I'm teaching has to do with quartering angles, trajectory down and trajectory side to side.
Right.
Well, here's a question. What does quartering away or quartering towards mean? So when you get in and say, I shot a buck, he was quartering away. There's no definition of that except to say it's not broadside.
Right.
I mean, there's nothing. So what I did is I'm bringing a protractor. I'm bringing basic math into this. So when we're defining where the perfect kill shot is, it's going to be at, say, 45 degrees or 50 degrees or 75 degrees. So it's specific. And then what does the animal look like at that angle? And this is all the research I'm working on that I have not done yet, but that's all what I am going. So when you see a deer, say it's at 75 degrees angled away, you'll know that by how much of the body that you see. I'll give, because everything I have to have references to teach. And then I want it so you will know the absolute pin point within 1/4 of an inch, perfect shot. Perfect. And
let me interrupt you right there, Brian.
Yes.
Let me interrupt you right there. That's really good stuff. So, you know, if I think about, you know, the quartering away, we as dog trackers, first of all, let me back up and say, when you reference, this is where you guys can help. You're referencing dog trackers.
Absolutely. Yes.
Hundreds and thousands of, you know, collectively thousands of deer nationwide tracked, and, you know, many more tracked and recovered, but thousands, literally thousands recovered. And when you talk about, you know, as we, you know, we call it the hunter interview, when we were talking about, when we're talking to when the hunter calls us and starts, you know, asking us to come out, we start asking our line of questioning. And one of them invariably is, you know, is what angle was the deer standing? And to your point, well, it's always broadside, but it's never broadside. Very, very rarely is anything truly broadside. You know, there's always some little bit of an angle, and the slightest angle makes the biggest difference in what we do. So my point to all of that is, if you're able to develop something that the hunters can, in essence, study and become familiar with, and know that about the angle that the deer was standing, just based on what they're seeing, that would help the trackers too. Now, the problem we have, if it's a problem, but a factor in all of that is, it's just a reality of it is the hunters are seldom accurate in where they think they hit the deer. You know, so they were standing at 75 degrees and I hit him right there. Well, probably what they really did is hit him further down the quarter than what they thought. But it doesn't matter, though, in the work that you're trying to do, because that will help us. You know, everything that, when our line of questioning, I think most of us would agree there's two things we're trying to glean. Is the deer dead or going to die? And what time should we go track it? Kenny, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, what I wanted to say is, this is what he's doing, what he's wanting to put together is not so much going to help us with our hunter interview, but what it's going to do is help people make better shots.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, because by the time they call us, they have no clue where they hit it. You know, the adrenaline starts pumping. Yeah. You know, and the same thing. as this is put together, it's really going to take some studying by the hunters, because this needs to be drilled into them so that it becomes second nature. If not, they're just going to do what they always do. And I think this is great, because
I do too.
so many people do not know where to properly place their shots. One thing we always tell them is aim for the exit. And that's just simple terms, because if you aim for the exit, you're likely going to pass through some vitals. Although I will say this, if you're not utilizing the right broadhead, or the right setup, the right ammunition, you aim for the exit and you go through a shoulder or front leg bone or something, it can change the game. But I like this.
Yeah, I like it a lot. Couple more questions, Brian. Going back to that raghorn you shot, do you think that your arrow hit a rib and deflected? Is that what you think
No,
happened?
what happened is I went through with him with 2 blades instead of 3. I shot him with an Exodus broadhead, because you get into broadhead, you're getting into religion, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I believe in them, but they do have a flaw, and that is they're attached in the front. They're 40 thousandths thick, but the fact that blade broke off, and we've shot them into moose, I mean, you could shoot them into steel. But I thought, how could that blade break off? So my theory was the arrow was spinning, and just the tip of the broadhead caught the rib, because that would have the side torque force. I forget what it's called in physics, but so it would catch it at the most torque possible on the edge, and I've got the rib, and it was just cut into the rib about 1/8 of an inch is all it was. So it would just catch that outside edge and allow it to still spin and snap right off. So that was one of the factors, but there's a lot that goes into, if we get into the physiology of death and how they die when they're lung shots. So I don't want to get ahead and go into a bunch of detail you don't want to go into, guys. But
so I do want to say I'm familiar with the broadhead. I have also seen track deer that had similar results with ramcats. Ramcats are kind of similar. They, the way that they attach to the front of the broadhead, and the blades come back without any support going back into the.
Yeah, that's it. Without support in the back. Yes.
Yeah. And that's one thing I noticed. Personally, I just said personally, I'm not going to recommend those because they don't have that support. And I'm going to get some haters here, but it's the same thing with some of the big wide cut 2-blade like Rage. If you start hitting bone, they're going to break easier.
Yeah, I with the Exodus, and again, my deal is I'm not sponsored by anybody. I as a Christian, I want to tell the truth. So it seems like you lost an elk partially because a blade broke, and you're sticking with the broadhead. I believe it was kind of a freak thing. I believe it is a flaw, but the reason the Exodus from the tests I've done is they hold their edge of their blades so good that when you take them after you shoot through the animal, you can pick them up and shave with them after they've gone through the animal about half the time I found. And the reason that is, one thing that separates them, because now I'm giving a commercial for them when I just got them given a flaw, but that's the reality. There's 2 sides of a coin, but their quality of their steel, and this is something they don't advertise, I don't know why, their vice president told me this, is so good that they cannot stamp the blades when they manufacture them. They have to do it. I think it's an EDM process where they actually cut them out, because they're so hard, they're so thick, and they're so sharp. But guess what you give up? You get more brittle, right?
Yep.
So, and that's what happened in that situation. But, and it wasn't elk.
Yeah.
I've seen some crazy things. I actually tracked a deer this year. The guy calls me and he says, "Look, I double lung this deer. It was a perfect shot." And I didn't say it. Well, actually, I did say it to him. I said, "Yeah, they're all perfect double lung shots," kind of joking around. So by the time I got there, I had another or 2 more deer to track before we got there. So by the time I got there, it had been about 5.5, 6 hours. And I turned the dogs out. We're tracking off lead, and I'm looking at the blood, I'm like, I don't see any sign of a lung hit here, but we're going to push forward. And the deer was actually bedded up in a pond. It jumped up in front of us. The dogs couldn't get it bayed up. And then finally it hit a deeper pond, started swimming. The dogs had it bayed up. Go in there. As we got close, it broke. We did this 2 times. And by then I saw the wound. I said, well, maybe it hit one lung, and that's why it has so much life. But the dogs got tired. So I called my buddy John. I said, John, I need you to come back me up if you can, bring some fresh dogs. And he did. Anyways, by the time we ended up getting the deer, we were able to finally get the deer stopped and dispatched. It was, in fact, double lung and nicked the heart. So it was kind of that low forward. I mean, just barely nicked the heart and barely nicked both lungs. But 9 hours later, at an 85-degree ambient temperature, that deer was still alive.
That's
inexplicable.
Well, that's what this is all about. That's what I'm wanting to do. Like I said, as a Christian, the Bible says, get understanding. I'm trying to delve deep into those because I've got 3 other ones that I've got documented now that were double lung shot. And one is by a very famous person. And I was talking to a gentleman by the name of Jack Frost. He's one of the first persons to get the 29 Grand Slam. He's a surgeon in Anchorage, Alaska. And since I've been going to the ATA and blowing lungs up and doing all those crazy things, he's the medical expert on the National Bowhunter Education, I believe, Marilyn Bentz out of South Dakota. And he saw my work this year because I didn't see him there last year. And he said, Brian, I admire what you're doing, but all these things you're trying to find out. Now, this is a medical doctor. He's in the Grand Slam. He's called a living legend in the archery world. So he said, there are just some things, Brian, we're never going to know. Now, I don't accept that. I'm wanting to find out, but he may be right at the end of the day, but I'm trying to physiologically get understanding. So in all 3 of these incidences that I have where these deer were double lunged, I'm missing one piece of evidence I need terribly bad, and that is the actual lungs. Because then I want to take them to the anatomy professors that I've worked with, the University in St. Paul and in Madison, Wisconsin, and take them there and sit down with the experts there and see what all they have to say. Because it's amazing working with veterinarians. It's amazing how there's different opinions on physiology and anatomy. It's pretty surprising to me. And that's what my deal is. I want to have it when I give you an answer, I can document it, not my opinion. And that's where when we do these ribs, what rib that's hit, that's what matters. Hit him in the lungs, hit him in the liver. What rib did you hit? What angle was it? How high up were you in the tree? And this deer that if we have a chance, I'll show you, is designed to be a tool from every deer that's shot. If I get the right evidence from them, I can go back and use these 2 models that I have for reenactments of exactly where it was that was hit. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kenny.
And Michael Beck just brought up a comment. I was going to share kind of when I shared that story, a lot of people started saying, well, what broadhead? And I don't think in this particular incident, the broadhead mattered. I will say, I'll share it a little later. But the general consensus was that the broadheads were likely dull and the veins just rolled. However, when you start diving into how lungs work and you start diving into more in depth on the heart, you realize that it's not about it just pushing veins out of the way. But most people doesn't dive that deep. I'm sure Brian has. Matt, you probably have too. But yeah, so I didn't get into disputing that. I just let them.
Would you like to talk about that in a little bit of detail now, or is
yeah,
that
and that's where I was
much?
going with that. Because whenever your YouTube video first came out with expanding the lungs, I use that a lot to discuss the
Yes.
no man's land,
Yep.
that isn't really there, the void between the lungs and the spine. And I heard the same thing over and over again. Oh, he overinflated the lungs, or maybe there's a void when the lungs deflate, which the lungs do not deflate. If you guys do not know that, so that's a kind of lead into that. I mean, I believe you're on the same page as I am with that, Brian. Anyone that studies it realizes that that's not how lungs work. So I know we just opened a can of worms talking about the no man's land as well as the lungs, but it kind of goes hand
this
in
is
hand.
where I want to go. The more
Yeah, me too.
controversy, the better. I love it.
Yeah.
love
So, and everyone like that particular deer did not bleed much. And it was a low shot. Everyone thinks that a high shot, the cavity has to fill up with blood before it comes out. This was a lower shot. Obviously, if it nicked the heart and lungs, it was a lower shot, which in theory, or I should say in most people's theory, it should have bled a lot.
Right.
And the blood loss the deer should have been expired just from the blood loss. When the reality is that's not how things work. Am I wrong, Brian?
I have well, here we go, my friends. Are you ready to get into this?
Go.
The question is to go back. Let's start with the big picture and then come down into that detail. When a deer is shot through one lung, the majority of the time they live, correct? You guys are dog trackers. That's pretty much a given. When they're shot through both lungs, 99.99% they're going to die and die fast. But there are exceptions to the rule. So then we ask this question: how and why, when a deer is shot through both lungs, do they die? What is the physiological cause of death? Because as you know, it's a pretty common known, and it's not a fact, it's a thing that more people have told me than I've seen. They'll die quicker shot through both lungs than they're shot through the heart. Very interesting. I mean, you just start seeing these things and you start pondering them. The Bible uses the word selah. Think about these things. But now this gets into how they die when they're shot through the lungs. And they die for two different, completely separate reasons that converge at the exact same spot. And one, of course, is blood loss. So now you take a look at the blood loss when they're shot through the lungs, when they're shot through another organ. The liver has the highest concentration of blood in it, with, I suppose you could say, the exception of the heart, where all the blood's pumping through it. But the liver has more blood in it, like up to 13, 14% than any other organ in the body, more so than the lungs. And yet, as we know, liver hits can die as long as a gut shot hit. It's just a bonus with blood, but it can still take a long, long, long time. So it's considered a fatal shot, but not an immediate fatal shot. Double lung shots die generally, from my observation, within 100 yards. And you figure, how long does it take a deer to run 100 yards? Maybe 150. The most I've ever seen is 200 yards, and it's when they actually hit through the heart and the lungs. So why is that? Well, their blood pressure in the lungs is less than in the rest of the body, because the blood has to flow through the body and come back to the lungs. And if the lungs were highly pressurized, the blood would not be able to flow back to it. I mean, it's just a phenomenon that's just like, wow, how all this works. So there's major blood vessels in the lungs, which your friend was right. It could have been a dull broadhead leading to lack of, when it hits, just the luck of the draw of not hitting a major blood vessel. But generally, anytime you're close to the heart, but above it, because remember, the blood vessels come out of the heart. Right. And as a rule, the arteries are the blood vessels that come out of the heart that are high pressure. The veins are the ones that go back into the heart that are low pressure. So the arteries spray in forceful blood, where the veins just bleed. They have a bleed, so it's slower. Yep. But around that heart, there's so much going on. He should have hit something and should have died. But obviously, it didn't. And that's how come we can learn things by deduction. If it would have hit major blood vessels, it would have died. But now here's another interesting fact that makes that not true. That's what I'm saying. I'm going to contradict myself a lot, because there's two sides to coins. Things are not black and white. I talked to my local, when I raised deer, my local veterinarian raised deer as well. And he did surgery on a deer on the, I believe it was a femoral artery in the back leg. And he accidentally cut it. And that, as you know, you can just nick that thing with a broadhead and that deer is going to die. He cut it and it blew him away. It immediately seized up and shut itself right off. So now you're seeing one guy shoots him, the deer dies. I hit the same exact same spot. I didn't get him. Well, it turns out that arteries actually have, they call it a muscle. I look at them, I don't see no muscle, but it has the tendency of a muscle that it can constrict and shut its own blood supply off. So when you see the artery has the possibility of doing that, where a vein doesn't. So maybe somebody hit something, had a lot of blood coming out, and there it was, but then it constricted and it literally, it didn't suture itself, but it literally closed itself off. I mean, isn't that just amazing? And so when you start seeing all these physiological things that happen, then you could say that possibly couldn't happen in that situation. Now, back to the other thing, going back from not just blood loss from the broadhead in the lungs, this is the thing that gets really tricky to understand. And it's to deal with lung collapse. Now, when people think of the lungs, they think of two balloons. And a balloon is filled up with air that's it's full of positive pressure. As soon as you hit it, the air from the inside of the balloon pops out. On the lungs, it works just the opposite. When we breathe in, our diaphragm pulls back, our ribs, the intercostal muscles, which is the meat that we eat when you have ribs, they pull the ribs out. That makes that space larger. And when it makes the space larger, that creates literally negative pressure in the thorax cavity, which is from the diaphragm forward of the rib cage. That's when the air shoots in the mouth and then the lungs can inflate. And then the process is just the opposite when the diaphragm goes forward. But what happens is this, and here's the question. When you breathe out, your lungs are still inflated. So in theory, because we're breathing atmospheric air, right? So when you breathe out, your lungs are still inflated. How do they stay inflated? Why wouldn't they? I can understand it's called Boyle's law. When the space gets bigger, negative pressure air comes in and inflates the lungs. But why wouldn't, like a balloon, when you breathe out, it just go down to a collapse of a balloon? But they don't. And here's a very important point. And this is where it comes into blood tracking in the situation there in having two holes and the size of broadheads. This all relates. What keeps the lungs inflated is the outside of the lung has a membrane which is also attached to the inside of the ribs. It's called the pleural membrane. And that space between the ribs and that lung, which there is no void space, but they call it a space, but there's a negative pressure there, and that keeps the lungs pulled to the outside. And when the air gets in that space, that breaks the seal, which in my mind, a layman's mind, is basically a vacuum or a suction that's keeping the lungs sucked to the outside of the walls. When that air gets in there, in that space, it literally takes the atmospheric air and it pushes the lungs down. And when it pushes the lungs, it displaces the position of the heart. So the blood can't flow back to the heart and it stops the circulation. And guess what? The same thing on hemorrhaging and the same thing on lung collapse. Remember I said they come together? They come together by causing a lack of oxygen to get to the brain. They go there quick, and you see a deer when they're double lung, you don't see them gasping for air like, oh, they can't breathe anymore. You never see a deer gasping for air there, except they're hitting the diaphragm. But you see them getting dizzy, falling down and getting up and staggering. They're having a lack of oxygen to their brain. It shuts it all off and they die. So it's a combination of a double lung shot of hemorrhaging, losing oxygen, lung collapse, lack of oxygen together, and they die. So in the case where the deer lives, it just tells me two things that I can deduct for sure. The air did not get into that cavity in a sufficient amount to force those lungs down. Now, when that can take place by the skin covering the hole, that could take place by the broadhead. Like if you get hurt in an accident, they say you've got a knife in you, don't pull the knife out because that allows air in there. You want to keep that in there. It could be a clot. It could be if they hit the tricep muscle. the big muscle that causes the crease behind the leg there, that is so muscular. A broadhead, in theory, and Randy Elmer's the one that told me this, and he's my hero. He's a large animal vet. He's in the Archery Hall of Fame. But you could put a broadhead through those tricep. There's 3 layered muscles, and no air gets in there, so now you don't have lung collapse. And if you just got unlucky and you missed all the blood vessels, the animal stayed calm, because a rapid heartbeat, the faster they run, the more the heart pumps, the more it's pumping the blood out, right, to die quicker, instead of it stayed calm. And you see a deer like my elk that just walks away. The heart is not pumping. It has a chance to clot up, has a chance for the hole to cover itself with the skin or blood clot or something there, so the air doesn't get in. And voila, all these things take place and the animal can live. So I told you we'd get into a little bit deep, but that's the reality.
Yeah, so to kind of share a little bit more info on what happened with this particular one, it was maybe a 1/8 of an inch cut on the heart. So when I say nicked, it was nicked.
Just a muscle nick, in essence, is all that was.
But it did, but to cut it, hit it though, it had to hit the pericardium, which the pericardium is part of the mediastinum, which separates the 2 lungs. And if the air gets into the one and collapse, it'll get into the other one.
Well,
so,
that's
which
what I
is
was
very
gonna say. It hit about an 1/8 inch in the heart and maybe a 1/4 inch into both lungs. So that was the only thing that made me think that's probably why it lived as long as it did.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'm sure us pushing that, you know, helped it expire a little quicker, or get weaker, I should say, get weaker. And then when I took that break, waiting for him to come and give my dogs a rest, and then we turned them back out, you know, it didn't take long at all, and we had it.
Yeah.
But you still had to put another kill shot in it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you would think, I mean, if you'd asked me, it would say, no, the fact you're pushing it, making it run, that's going to suck that air in there and collapse them lungs right away. But it didn't.
No. And the only thing I could think is, you know, like you said, that probably the fat or something had helped plug that so that it held a little bit of pressure.
Yes. The question is, would have that deer lived or died? And that's the situation. Like in my elk, it did die. And the question I have, did it die of blood loss, or did it die eventually from lung collapse? Because remember, when your lungs pull in, the air that gets in there, every time your diaphragm pulls in, it also has the ability to, if it can try to reinflate the lung, to push that air back out. So there's kind of a war going on with outside pressure trying to get in there and collapse the lungs, and the diaphragm trying to reinflate the lungs and push it back out. So I'm on a journey to try to find that out. I don't know if I ever will, but I'm enjoying it.
And my buddy Alan Barrett, so give you a little background on his comment. He said, "Did he just say not wait?" So I was giving Alan a hard time all weekend. So on his way to the Florida event, he made a Facebook post saying that he was going to have fingers pointed at him regarding his wait times. So I immediately called him, or I should say lack of wait times. So I immediately called him, and you know, we were joking around all weekend long. I was giving him crap about not wanting to wait and give the deer time, you know. And I'm just going to say, even in this situation, you know, I personally feel had it not worked out where it was 6 hours before I put on it, I believe it would have had way too much life. We'd have probably pushed it off the property. You know, even during that six hours, I'm sure that wound took a toll on it enough for us to be able to stop it when we did.
Your buddy does have a point to be made, though. And I'm not suggesting this at all, but if he said that, the point is, if that air got pushed in there by it running right away, where it had a chance to die quick as opposed to it clotting up, to heal that by doing it quick. In other words, if you could be, say you had a dog and you're right out in an open field in a desert, so there's no way it can get, and you got snow there, so there's no way it can get away from you. There could be an argument on one side of the coin to say that the quicker you push it, the quicker it will die. If it's dying from hemorrhage loss, like say a liver or some other place, well, it's got to bleed, and that does end up taking time. But by pushing it, it pumps the heart, and the heart is a pump, and it pumps the blood out. So, and again, I'm not advocating that at all because of all the extenuating circumstances, but literally, he does have a legitimate point.
Correct. We just
really
have to play that fine
Of
line
course.
of,
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, we take a risk of pushing that deer off of the property,
absolutely.
and then we can't cross the property and the deer goes to waste.
Yes,
So more times than not, time is on our side.
absolutely. Yeah, no, I know that. I'm just kind
Well,
of
I
giving
know
your
what you
buddy.
mean. He's going
Yeah.
to run with it. He's going to run. I'm going to hear about it next year. Actually, I'm going to hear
Well,
about
he can run with it, but I'm not advocating. My situation to advocate it would be in a desert that's full of snow that the deer cannot get away. You know, that's all your own private land. You know, and that doesn't exist.
You just gained a big fan there, Brian.
I've got a bunch of enemies. Remember, I'm not making any money at this. I have nothing that I believe that I'm holding on to. In fact, I always challenge people to challenge me to prove me wrong, because I want to be proven wrong, because I'm a searcher for truth. So if I say something that I'm proven wrong, I get excited because now I'm speaking the truth where I was wrong before, because I don't ever want to be wrong. Because I can tell you, when we're dealing with this lungs, I'll tell you two things right now that I learned this last year I did not know. And these are really very interesting. And I've got both of them on video. Actually, the one the guy didn't give me the video back. One was where a guy shot a doe, and I had this at the ATA, and I had questions there. What organs do you think it'll hit and how far it went? And I would say 75% of the people said this doe was shot in the heart. And it was kind of a quartering on shot, and he hit it low. And I tell them when I showed it, because we got the deer and we could take it apart, examine it, it was shot through the liver. Nobody believed it, but it was shot through the liver. But it just missed the heart. It went backwards and hit the liver and went out. But that means it stayed inside the thorax cavity, which meant in front of the diaphragm, which means it had to hit lung.
Yep.
It didn't. And so I'm going, I see la. Sila means think about it, ponder. Well, then I was down in Georgia this last spring. They paid me if I'd come speak at an event down there. They'd put me on a week hog hunt because I really like hunting hogs a lot. And I was with a cameraman because I shot a hog, then he shot one, then I shot one. And he shot it, and it was quartering away. Here we go with angles again. He came in through the guts, through the liver, and came out right would be, let's say 2-3 inches behind the heart, but way far forward. So I actually had 3 hogs on the floor when I did the seminar, because this is what I want to do. I want to teach with animals. So I've got the actual animals there. We didn't take the lungs out. And there was a doctor that I'd met before the seminar. And I said, would you stay through my seminar and try to find something I'm saying that's wrong? Because I don't want to, I'm not a medical person. I don't want to misrepresent anything. So when we were done, he went through the diaphragm, not that far from center, going forward. And on those lungs, there was no hit on that lung. In both the lungs on that pig and the lungs on this doe, they both had a black stripe on the rear end leading edge of the lung, which I'm assuming was blood that for whatever reason coagulated in the very end of it. So I asked this doctor, he's an emergency room physician. I said, he's inside the thorax cavity. He clearly went where he should have hit that lung for sure there. There's no cut in it. So this is with the doctor right there with the dead pig, with the lungs right there. You know what his answer was? Because I said, I don't know. So I can say this. I have 2, but that's the beautiful thing, guys, about what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to have a documentation project. So I've documented 2 different times, one on a pig and one on a whitetail, where it was in the thorax cavity, very, very low. And it did in back, not back that far actually, and it did not hit the lung. And that's what I like about what I'm doing. That's just a fact. It's unarguable. Trying to get understanding is another thing. So
well, that ties right in. that ties right into perfect time to bring up Joe Tenney's comment when we were talking about all of this. That my only rule, the only thing that's certain in recovering is nothing is certain.
Well,
You know,
well, wow.
from a dog tracker's perspective, that's what we say. There are no absolutes. We don't know, man. I mean,
Oh yeah, you never know unless you go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Where do you think it's hit? I don't know.
In the deer.
You know. Yeah. You got blood. You got hair. I don't know. I don't know where you hit it. You know.
Yeah, I mean, there is definite cues you can look at. You know,
Oh, for sure.
You know, the blood. You know, like one thing that surprised a lot of people. You know, your typical liver shot that liver blood that you see is that dark maroon or burgundy with some grit in it. That's your typical, but I've also been there and it be bright red. You know, and then you get there and it's a liver shot, and you're like, what the heck just happened? Where's the
hepatic artery instead of the vein?
Right. And I tell everyone, you know, and I'm sure you see this most of the time, you hit liver, you hit something else. You either hit lung and liver or you hit liver and gut.
Yeah.
Just about every time. You know, but if there's any sign of liver, I'm waiting. Any sign of gut, I'm waiting, you know.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I can't wait to be able to get this video out, but I shot my deer this last year. My deer hunting is, as you know, Matt, I told you, is really poor. I've seen one buck in 2 years. I work a lot, so I don't hunt a lot, but we have wolves and predators. But anyway, long story short, my Exodus broadhead cut between the lung and the liver. So perfect. I've got the liver in the freezer. I've got my deer reconstructed exactly the holes where it was, where 2 blades cut a channel through the liver and 1 blade cut through the lung, all at the exact same time.
You got a video out on Facebook with that, Brian, don't you, right now?
You know what? I think my editor that I hired, he went and did something with that footage. I haven't even seen it.
It's out there. I've seen it. It's absolutely out there.
Yeah, I haven't seen. You know what? That could be. I'm going to end up taking the liver and I'm going to end up molding it. I'm going to mold the liver where you see just the lines where it is at it. And then I'm going to mold it when I open it up so you can see it. And then I've got with my model that's going to be back here, I'll be able to put my arrow in it. And then I'm going to be able to set my liver in it to line up with that cut exactly on the exact placement of where that was in the ribs. And that's what I want. It's going to be just like, because I'm trying to get everything perfect. And if you would see like these diagrams and some of the stuff we're working on, it'll take us just to get the ribs in these things to fit together a week, just drawing to try to get all the different views perfect. I mean,
so
like in the ribs and the steer.
With saying that, and you know, you like the controversial stuff, you say.
Oh yeah, give it to me.
So I see that you shoot a fixed blade.
Yeah.
So what is your experience or opinion on fixed blade versus mechanical?
Okay, I have a very strong opinion on broadheads as far as what I teach as the anatomy hunter, because I got to watch how is my opinion on broadheads any different than anybody else's, right? I just like, if it's just my opinion, who gives a rip? So right. As the anatomy hunter, I've got to say facts. And so here's what I say on that. I put all broadheads in 2 categories. And it has to do, it's something you've never heard this before. It has to do with where you're trying to hit the deer. Because I teach 2 different kill shots. One is the area on the deer to shoot at that gives you the largest target possible that the deer will die within, 10 seconds, within 200 yards. That's one thing. The other one is the fire hydrant shot, the one where you take the blood vessels off the top of the heart, especially the aorta, the biggest blood vessel there is under pressure, and they die. And that's why I call it the fire hydrant. Boof, it blows and it dies quick. I don't advocate the heart shot because, as you guys know, they hit them in the shoulder blade all the time because the deer drops, they hit them in the shoulder blade, they're up in a tree, they hit high. So you're cruising for problems. But who am I to tell Levi Morgan when he's got a deer at 20 yards there and he could hit the middle of the aorta. Who am I to tell him not to take that shot, knowing that he could do it? And I was with an ATA classic winner when I was doing my research in Texas. I filmed him shooting a black buck. It was right there. He hit it right through the aorta, right where he wanted to. It went 12 yards, just blew the blood all over the place, because it actually cut them off there. So I have to be very careful, in my opinion. But now back to the broadheads. If you're going for the fire hydrant shot, now you're in the danger zone. I call it the devil's triangle, where you could hit the shoulder blade coming in high, the leg lifts up as they drop. You can hit the humerus bone there. So the bottom line is there's bone. And even if what people don't know is you go through the shoulder blade, right? What's behind it's the backbone. So I hit it in the shoulder. Well, you also hit it in the backbone right there. It just got slowed down. That's why you didn't go through, because you hit all of that. The bottom line is heart shots mean you're going to hit them in the bones. So you need to have an equipment set up to deal with penetration through bones. If you're going through the theory, like one of the biggest hunters in the country I know is, he shoots back farther because he knows the animal's dead. It's going to die. So he uses the biggest broadhead possible because he's not worried about hitting bones. His miss is he could hit it in the liver or the guts. So then he wants a big one there. So that is my theory of the different categories of broadheads. Which one's made most for penetration and bone? But that's got to do with the poundage of your bow. That's got to do with your arrow, kinetic energy, and all of that going through the size of the arrow. That's a whole area there. And then if you're going back far, like I just watched a bear that was shot the other night right in front of the back legs with a rage. And he said it must have hit a bone because he just hit through the guts, basically through the intestines, and he still didn't get much penetration. So, but honestly, the question I would ask you guys would be that on broadheads. I don't feel that I have the qualifications to make that, and that's where you guys do.
So I'll share my experience and my opinion. So my opinion is based off of what you just said as well. A wide cutting mechanical or any mechanical has a disadvantage when it comes to bone. And I think that disadvantage outweighs the disadvantage of using a smaller diameter cut fixed blade on soft tissue. So when you factor in pros and cons of each, I feel that the fixed blade outweighs it. I mean, you're still going to kill them just as dead if you hit tissue. It may take a little longer. They're still going to die. But if you hit bone, you have a higher chance than if you did with a mechanical that
There's no question about that.
Come apart. And when you start, I have years and years of data that shows. I mean, fixed blades are the way to go.
Yes, but as in all things, me being the contrarian, right? The other side of the coin, not to disagree, but remember I told you the 3 different documentations I got a double lung that lived? One of them was with a beautiful buck. It lived. They got lots of trail camera pictures where it went in and it came out. They're letting me know about it. Says, we got to get this animal. We got to get this animal. It was shot with an iron will broadhead. An iron will broadhead, arguably in its category, I call them a solids or the old Fred Bear, except on steroids, single, double bevel, sharp. I know the owner of the company. I mean, they're as quality built as you can have. It lived. The deer came back later. She shot it through the liver. They got it. That's how come I know where it was hit. We've got everything documented. I can't wait I want to do my podcast I want to do is going to be basically interviews and stories like this that I can document. He said he would do it with me. Now he claims, this is where this gets really, and again, if you could take it as fun and everyone's opinion on their sides of the coin, he's a rage broadhead fanatic. He's in the Pope and Young Grand Slam Club, whatever it is, the 29 animals. And he's a rage advocate. His wife shot this iron will. And to this day, he believes if she would have shot that deer with a rage, that deer would have died in that instance because she hit it back. Actually, it was broadside and it turned and then it went forward as it went away. It was absolute perfect shot. And it literally came out, like you say, out the front, came out through the front shoulder, right in front of it all the way through. But it lived with a beautiful broadhead. So it's just like everything. There's pros and cons. It's just not all black and white.
No, I just feel like if I feel like we owe it to the game that we're harvesting
Absolutely.
to do our due diligence, which would be, let's lay out those pros and cons and,
Yes.
you know,
Yes. I'll
and
tell you a
bring,
really neat story. When that at the ATA and doing what I'm doing, I get to meet a lot of people and I get to hear their opinions. What it is, I had, and I can mention these gentlemen's name. There was two people talking on this subject. One is named Bernie Behringer. He's considered the bear professor. If you get into bear hunting, he's like one of the gurus. He's written, I don't know, I think a dozen books, all this. And he is of the belief you need on bears a broadhead that's going to give you an exit hole. So you don't use the big broadheads that just make one hole, because two holes are better than one, he says. He's very big on this. Well, he was talking at the ATA in my booth right there, and I get to listen to the conversation to Dave Holt. Dave Holt was the equipment editor for Bowhunter Magazine for 25 years. And Dave shoots about 200 African animals a year, and he is a rage fanatic. And he was saying, and he knows physiology, I mean, he's got tons of experience. And he was telling Bernie, nope, just the opposite. One hole, as long as that's big, and as long as you hit the mediastinum, that animal is going to die just as quick. So
I would agree with that. However, you're going to have a better blood trail with an exit, typically.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And which is one of the things I want to find out is, why do they tend to bleed out the exit hole more than the entrance hole? And I talked to some teachers that teach physiology, and when they told what his theory is, and what's interesting to me is, it's like when you take a spigot and you try to a gas can, and the gas chugs because it's got that vacuum, with the air in it. You cut a little hole in it, and then it can flow freely, at the backside. He believes that the exit hole is the spout with the gas coming out of it. The entrance hole is the air allowing it to come in to let it pass out. Now, that doesn't make sense in my mind, but I don't know.
Right.
I've got a lot to learn.
So, and I will say, like Joe Tenney says, Rage Extreme is his favorite. His tracks is 50-50. I will say this, my data shows that we track far more mechanicals and far more Rage than anything, but I'm also realistic, and I know that they are the most popular broadhead on the market.
Yes.
Just like a 6.5 Creedmoor and rifle, they became so popular, more people are using them, so we're going to track more of them.
Yeah. That's
not going to stop me from ragging on the people just to have fun and poke fun. But I can't dispute the fact, like, he brought up about shot placement over broadhead. Even then, I just feel like using a mechanical, if you are off on your shot placement, you do hit that leg or that lower shoulder, you have better odds of that broadhead holding together and having a lethal shot.
And then you add my 2 cents in the mix. If you're going to use the Rage, the heart shot, especially if you're a tree stand hunter, you should aim back to what I call the perfect kill shot, which is in the crease, which you actually use the back of the scapula as your measuring zone and come down from that. So if you do shoot high, you're not going to hit the shoulder blade, but you're as close to it as you can. But the trouble is, everyone's got these heart shots, which is putting you right in the middle of all those bones. And then you add a mechanical to it, and now you're asking for troubles. Even if you make a perfect shot and the deer drops, because the farther forward that you come in the lungs, the more the lungs taper down, and you just got a smaller target.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Let me ask you guys this about the mechanicals. I have heard from, and I don't know where the data comes from, if it's even data. But I think physics, we could all agree just fundamentally that physics come into play here, and none of us invented physics. We talk about penetration. A 2-inch mechanical takes an awful lot of kinetic energy just in blade deployment. I have been told that it can take at times up to 60% of the arrow's energy just in blade deployment. So now that takes away from penetration. So
Which
whether
is why
that
you see less penetration.
What's that?
That's why you see a
Yes,
less
and that's
penetration.
my point. That is exactly my point. When another factor. Again, I'm not advocating one way or the other, but you can't deny the physics. It takes energy to deploy blades, mechanical blades. It just does. Which, when you're doing that, you're taking away from its ability to penetrate. And if you're on a perfectly broadside shot and you miss both ribs, it's zero problem. But if you're on that quartering degree angle, whatever that is, and you hit the entrance rib, through dense muscle and out the liver and hit another, whatever, you're going through that much of the deer, you're dissipating energy quickly.
Yeah. And it's not always about where you're aiming. Things go wrong.
No.
Deer move.
Absolutely.
You hit a vine, you hit a twig, broadhead opens in flight, which is why what happened to
All
me.
of that matters. Yeah. All of that matters.
And I know we got down a broadhead trail here, but it ties right into,
it's all
all our
relevant
photos.
to us helping people to kill
Yes.
animals and not wound them, and them to hear the different opinions and what it's based on.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, Brian, what you're doing and what we're doing is all in the name of conservation.
It sure is.
It sure is. Yeah. I wanted to bring this up, and we'll get to other viewers' comments, because there's some good stuff here, and we're moving fast. So viewers, forgive us if we can't get to all of them. But Brian, I wanted to bring this one up, and I see over your right shoulder right now, between your cutaway and your half mount, that rib section. Can you grab that and bring it to the camera? No. Right in the middle between them. That no.
Oh, this here?
Yeah. That. Yeah. Bring that up.
Yeah.
That's can you bring that up to the camera?
Oh,
Or not?
I sure can. Now,
So put that.
I got to see you guys to guess what this is. What do you think this is and where it came from? You see that there? You see that there?
Yeah, it's a rib cage of a deer, right?
It's a what?
Is it a rib cage of a deer?
No, it's not.
What is it?
It's foam and it's Bondo. I guess people would call it fiberglass. It's actually Bondo. What this is, remember, when I do my research, I go fanatic into this, right? So what we did is this deer that's mounted behind me here with all these green dots on.
Yeah.
Which, if we get to that, I can get into that. What we did to get into this perfect, and we got so much content, videos and stuff to be made, but it's hung upside down. And this is the deer that son Jacob shot. We went in there and we literally bondoed the inside of the whole rib cage.
Yeah, that's my point. So hold your thought. I want you to talk, but put it facing the camera. Put the front end of the front of the deer facing the camera. Right there. Hold it right there. Now, this comment, Alan Burnett, what about facing you frontal shots? They're difficult. And why do they run so far? So if you guys can see that, look how narrow that is. So, Kenny, you want to talk about frontal shots and why they're so difficult, why they run so far? But I want to hold that up there again, Brian, because what I want to do is I want to feature that. I want to bring it up full screen. Nope, not me. I want.
We just got to see you. We just got to see you, Matt.
Hold it up again. You're full screen now. And you can see how narrow the top, as you're holding it, is the front of the deer. That is the front brisket area. Okay, there you go. The deer is facing you head on, and that is a true, real deer. Okay, so I wanted everybody to see that. So, what am I trying to do here? There we go. So, Kenny, you want or Brian, you want to talk about why they're so difficult?
Well, what happens is people. The front ribs, for you to get in for the front ribs on a frontal shot, you've got about 2.5 to 3 fingers to get your fingers in. That's about all the width that you actually have. Yeah. But what happens is the deer are broad there because that's where they've got the front shoulder, which is the shoulder roast that we eat. When you shoot them back in the ribs here in the summertime, you can literally see the ribs sticking out in the deer. You can see them. On these long furred ones, you don't. But in the front here, you've got all that shoulder muscle that's there, and you're shooting them there. It looks like it's a big target area, but the reality is any angle at all, off an inch, and the next thing you know, you're shooting right along the side of the animal.
Yeah, I've recovered a bunch. In fact, one that comes to mind is I got called to track a deer for a 12-year-old boy who had shot it facing straight on, and I actually had two. And what ended up happening when we got there, my dog bayed this deer up in a wide open watermelon field. We got up there to it. We finished it off, dispatched it, and when we got up there to it, he was taking a frontal shot with a rifle. It actually went down the side of the body. It went like basically in the armpit. It went in the meat of the front shoulder, out the meat of the front shoulder, singed the hide all the way down the side of the body. I have pictures somewhere. Yep. And hit one testicle. You know, I can't tell you. I mean, I can go back and look at all my notes, but a lot of deer that I've recovered that were frontal shots just grazed down the side.
Yeah.
You know, exactly. Probably should have never been recovered, to be honest, but they stop and fight.
Yeah, and that in certain tracking scenarios, you can recover them. You know, in northern states on lead, you're not going to. And at best, you get an arrow that does get inside there, you're off just a little bit. You're getting one lung, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
you know, you're basically shooting at the heart on the front, which brings up the question: what is an ethical shot? What's an unethical shot? The Bow Hunter Education, this is Marilyn Benz's organization out of South Dakota, which is Jack Frost is on the board. He's their anatomy expert there. They do not recommend anything except perfectly broadside or quartering away.
Yeah.
And that kind of puts me in a dilemma, because how do I want to promote something that's something that the ethical people have already come up with their standard where it is, and I go against them? So where I'm at is I have to agree with them, but people are going to take frontal shots. So I have to give a disclaimer and say, I don't recommend that. But people are, if you're an elk hunter, it's considered a great shot if you're an elk hunter, because you see on TV when they hit them right, you're hitting all the blood vessels right around that heart there, and they die super quick. So people see that and they think I can do that. But what they don't see is when they don't recover them, that's not shown.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Same with neck shots. I mean,
yeah. I've got one sent to me today that my editor edited of a deer that was shot quartering on. And again, that's why I'm going to take my deer here to find out what angle quartering on meant and what degrees. We're guessing it's like 17 degrees, really steep angled on. When he shot it, she dropped and turned, and he hit it, made a perfect double lung shot. But I want to go back and figure that out. I'll bet you his kill zone, he had to make a double lung shot on that doe at that angle, was about 2 or 3 inches. I mean, in other words, the circle, I'll bet you was about that big that he had to hit to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Very, very.
So my dogs give some advice on where to aim. My dogs prefer people to aim center mass.
Okay. Now, when you say center mass, now we've got horizontal, vertical. Does that mean more like the liver? I mean, because you get every gut shot deer that's shot. Is that what you're telling me?
Pretty much.
Okay. I've been told by every tracker.
That's what my dog's like. Now, I'm not going to tell someone to shoot there. I'm just saying my dog's like that.
Yeah.
Well, now you understand why some hunters, if they know how to let them go, will aim back farther, knowing that animal is going to die, and they come back the next morning, it's going to be dead.
Right.
So that's the other extreme of trying to shoot them in the heart and hitting the shoulder. Then you hit the guts, and that's I'm trying to teach. Where is that perfect spot? And by the way, the reason I haven't done that yet on any of my videos is I'm taking my target, and it's going to be on the market, hopefully by the ATA, and it's going to have the angles in here. It's going to be really cool. Yeah. But I can't reveal that. So the competition, because remember, I'm a sculptor. I sculpt all the Reinhardt archery targets. I can't I don't want to have that knowledge revealed, even though I'm kind of somewhat doing it, until I have the product out there, because otherwise someone else is going to beat us to the punch.
That's right.
So
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And we'll move. But look, I've got to do this. Michael Beck's been beating me up. Brian, as we talk about anatomy, he sent this to me in anticipation of this stream, and now he's been messaging me here. You know, so I've got to show you this, Brian. What do you make
okay.
of this? What do you make of this? Share screen. Hold on, this one. Hold on a second.
I've got Doris coming over here behind me looking. She's going to back me up in case I say something wrong.
No. Can you see that, dear?
Well, I mean, it looks like it got a case of the stretches.
What in the world? I said, Beck, what kind of freaks are you growing out there in Pennsylvania? He said they're taking the water from the mines.
I don't think I want to buy that trail camera brand.
All right. We have a lot of comments here, and I want to get some of them, but I also want to see Brian. I'd really like you to show us what you had behind you, your models.
Okay, this is going to be
kind of talk us through some of that. You know, we again, a ton of us have seen it, and I want to answer this question. There's a couple.
You haven't seen this, my friend. This you haven't seen.
All right. We'll either have there you go. Yeah, bring that camera right up there, and walk us through it. You know, tell us about it.
Okay, now this deer has got what is it? 3 or 4 different things that this thing was designed to teach. But let me give you a little background of what it actually is. This deer was shot on video. This is not a taxidermy mannequin. This was all mounted from scratch with the bones. The rib cage from this deer is what's inside it. The skull of this deer is inside this. There's no taxidermy mannequin. The bones, the shoulder bones, the humerus bones, the glenohumerus, all of that are in this deer. The heart is in this deer, and it was molded of the deer. It wasn't even something that I sculptured. So everything that I did on him, I did to reproduce him as close as can be without it being a sculpture. Now, all these dots that are on here, I just finished this just in time for the ATA. I asked people at the ATA, now that's Archery Trade Association that was in Indianapolis, Indiana in January. So these are all people that are either semi-pro archers or they own archery shops. I asked them, if you were to shoot this deer, if you were, what was it, Doris? If you were 15 feet up in a tree or is 20 feet in a tree and the deer's out at 20 yards, where would you want to hit this deer to hit them? And if you want to turn it over here, Doris. Right here, you can see this over here. That's the middle of the top of the heart. We actually missed the heart to hit the blood vessels. That's what I call the fire hydrant shot right there. So I showed them that if you wanted to hit this deer here and you're up in the tree there, where would you be? Where would you hit it? And we gave them these green stickers, and we gave them different colored ones, and they put them there, and I've got photographs of exactly where they did that. Then what I did, and this is where it gets kind of cool. And I got to get my angle meter over here quick, Doris. I forgot that. I'll show you what I did. Because my deal, remember, I'm trying to be as within 1/4 of an inch of perfect as possible. So now watch this. This is pretty cool. I stick this in here. I do this. I put this, if I remember what we had right, so we brought that up to, was that 21? I got to remember, it was about right there. And I said, right there exactly is where you would want to hit that deer if you were 20 feet up in a tree and the deer was out at 20 yards, because that's dealing with the angle, to the trajectory angle of your arrow coming towards the deer, and that's going to hit the top of the heart. Now, how do I know that hit the top of the heart? Especially when I can go all the way up there. That's as far as I can go without hitting the shoulder blade. Okay. And the thing that's neat, that actual shoulder blade is in there on hitting it. If I come back here where I think you should shoot there, you see I missed the shoulder blade? I can go that high there and still hit the heart. Now the catch is, how do I know I hit the heart and I'm hitting it in the top of the heart at all these other places? Well, I will show you. I'll take this little doohickey out of here and I will go and try not to break it in the process. Okay. This is the actual heart of Jacob's buck. I don't know if I'm too close or not. I just see myself.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay. This is this. I did sculpture the ventricles here. They're a little bit too big. I don't like the color, but this heart itself is literally just a Bondo fiberglass mold that I made of the heart, and then I reproduced it. And then what I did is where I wanted to hit the center of it, I put a rod in there. I put a fulcrum there, so I could put this arrow in here like this. And no matter what angle I tilt this, I'm going through the dead middle top of the heart or the fire hydrant shot. So all I have to do is figure out by the Pythagorean theorem, or actually asking Google, how high you're up in a tree, how far out it is, what degree angle is that? And believe it or not, we're going to be using degree angles on my deer to be able to show hunters by using a rangefinder where you shoot that deer to be able to make that perfect shot. Okay. You want my wife's want me? Oh, she wants to show
the
behind
ribs.
you.
Yeah.
Okay. You want to come around here, Doris? You just take the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is what you saw in that one film they did on the internet here. Remember that one?
Yep.
Okay, there's the cavity. These are the ribs. In fact, right here, I don't know if she can show you. That's the actual rib broke. That's the actual hole right there where Jacob shot his buck. This here. And there's where I shot mine, right above it, believe it or not, that I shot mine in the liver. And then what happens is this gets placed in there like yonder. And then this just shows how that pivots up and down. So I hit the absolute dead middle. I'll see if I can get my arrow in here to kind of flip it a little bit.
Yeah.
See that there? Isn't that slick? So that's she's going to go on the side and put that in how that works so you can see it. There it's coming in. Can you feel it, Dor? They got the gist of it.
Yep. And that heart location is dead nuts accurate to.
Well, I'm going to tell you. No, I'm going to tell you it's not.
Oh,
And I'm going to tell you why it's not. And yet
Tell
I
me.
spend weeks doing this. You know why it's not absolutely dead nuts perfect? It's dead nuts close.
okay. All right.
Here's why. There's two reasons. And remember, I'm going to be perfectly honest. One, I'm studying a dead animal. I'm not studying the live one, but I can tell you this.
Okay.
In fact, I'll show you some of the things we do in another rib cage over here. What we do all the time, because I've done this to so many animals. Like you see the holes here, whatever I'm wanting to find, I actually drill holes in the dead animal and the organs are in there. So when I take them apart, I've got the exact reference where they're at. Okay. But number one, the animal is dead. And number two, the other thing that's not dead and that's perfect is Brian Johnson's involved. And guess what? I am not perfect. But I can tell you this, though. In this, I can promise you, my wife and I, it is as I'm trying to get your camera, but right. Where are you guys at?
Yeah, you're good.
It is as dead nuts perfect is the two of us spending thousands. Now, did you catch what I said? Thousands of hours studying this. Nobody's come close to doing what we've done. But that doesn't mean we're good at it. That just means we work very, very, very hard. So,
Yeah.
Well,
but
if no one
which
else
is the other-
appreciates it,
in fact,
I
I'll
do.
give you one. I'll give you another reason. I'm going to Canada bear hunting. I want to shoot 2 bears. I have a great opportunity. My wife wants to shoot one of them in the heart because I'm going to be a speaker at the first bear sports show ever in the United States this year. It's going to be in Minnesota. That Bernie Behringer's there. I'm going to be one of the speakers. And I want to be able to have the exact ribs, the exact hole in the hearts. I want to be able to reproduce it and put it right back in there. The way I've done that with a hog. So on this is going to be another thing that we're in the process right here of working on here. See how that's going to be there? That's going to be an overlay of that there. And then the lungs going to be fitting is going to end up going back underneath there as well. And that's all we have spent over a week getting these things in all of these absolutely to correspond with the ribs on the inside, with using the thorax cavity of this here dealing with the fact that I mounted it and to let you know some things that are wrong. Okay. Cause everybody tells you how great they are, right? I'll tell you my flaws. This lung in the back right there, that is about 3/4 of an inch high because when I mounted the deer, I did not want a straight back. So I actually bent the vertebrae, which the deer, they can do that. I angled it up to give it some life so it wasn't stiff. And that lifted my vertebrae up. And so for me to get the lung to fit under the backbone right, I literally had to cheat the shape, even though we have spent days studying this because this is the inside cavity of that deer. So, I mean, we've gone over it and over it and over it and over it. And we've got an argument about, since it's not perfect, how do we cheat? How do we make it? So, but it is as close to as perfect as we possibly could do. That I can tell you. But it's not dead nuts perfect.
Well, I think it's close enough for dog trackers. Wouldn't you say, Kenny? Hey, Kenny, any comments or questions I want to say? Because before I want to get a close-up look of the model list behind you now, just so our viewers can see it, because I just love the accuracy of it. But before we move, Kenny, any comments or questions, and then we'll get into some really good viewer comments here, if you're okay with that.
I think this is great. This is good stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to make this full screen again, but because, see, there you go, man. And guys, look, hunters, if you are a hunter watching this, what in the world do you see behind that shoulder? Nothing vital. It's non-lethal space.
Well, everyone thinks it's such a great shot because, you shoot high shoulder with a rifle and they drop in their tracks. Yeah, because you're taking out the spine.
It's the bang flop. It's risky as heck. We all know it. The bang flop. I'm deathly against it. But yeah, Brian, is there anything particular that you would like to share about this model that could help a hunter or a dog tracker in terms of anatomy? Any myths that could be busted or confirmed?
Well, there's if we do another show sometime, the other side of it. This is all filled with holes. So I've got all kinds of teaching lessons of all kinds of arrows coming in from, like you're talking about the frontal shot. Can we get that in there, Doris? I've got all kinds of different angles, especially ones where people think it's a perfect shot and it's not. And it all has to do with angles, trajectory, both horizontal and vertical. Because let's face it, how many deer that are shot with a bow are shot in a tree? 90%, would you guess?
Yep.
So, and then how many of them are shot perfectly broadside? As you know, very, very few, even though they think they are. So then you get into a perfect side shot. What about if it's angled away? So, and then if you do take the 1/4 inch shots, you've got this here, this joint here, this is the scapula, this is the humerus. Together they form the glenohumeral joint. If you do take that frontal shot here, you have to determine whether you shoot on the outside here like this, or you shoot on the inside in here like this. Even though I don't. So now here's an interesting point. You said, what does it do for the hunters? You see how the liver sits on the right side. So if you're literally shooting the right side of the deer here, you could come in here and hit one lung in the liver and then go into the guts. Where on the other side, you just hit one lung and the guts. You could technically hit the spleen, but the spleen is flat and fits right along the side wall there, where the liver sits more at an angle like this.
Yeah.
And we've also got a display for this that shows the whole lung there. So, that's more like that there, the whole lung. This shows, again, if you take a look at this here from the top view, that shows the lung, and this is my sculpture, that the lung is concave convex. See that shape there like that? It's not perfectly flat across, and it comes in at the end. It's only 1/8 of an inch thick. So a rear lung shot, you're not hitting very much blood loss capillaries that you're hitting on the end, but you are allowing air to get in there. So, and that's where they're going to die of a lung collapse when their rear lung hit here, more so than they are from blood loss, because there's not much blood there to bleed out. So,
right.
It's kind of hard for me to hold this correctly there. But.
No,
there's the frontal shot Doris has right there. In fact, I had an elk at 12 yards. I was at full draw straight on like that. I did not take the shot, not because of my ethics. I didn't take it because of the beard. I did not know where that perfect shot on that elk would be to even make that shot.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
So-
it's risky. I've never recovered a full frontal. I haven't tracked a ton of them, but so Brian, what's the elbow called? What's the technical name? The
This is called my wife. We spent forever trying to pronounce. It's called the olecranon, but that's exactly right. It is the elbow. Yep.
Sounds like something off from Star Trek, the olecranon.
No.
And one of the things that I took out of your stuff is the olecranon can be used to locate the heart when the deer is standing in a natural, calm, broadside stance, right?
It can. The catch on all that stuff is the legs, the body. The deer are a lot of times not as much as a bear, but they're in a twist, they're in a turn, and the leg is front or back. And this one that we had at the show here in Indianapolis with all these green dots, when I ask people where, let's see if I get that right there like that. I got to lift that up a little bit. I'm sorry for this there. When I asked them where to hit this here, when they saw that leg being back, ooh, man, that leg's back. That leg's back. And everyone's used to studying with everything being straight down. Well, when the deer's walking, it changes things. Same thing with, the theory about shooting where the arrow exits you talked about earlier. Yep. That leg moves. So again, it's not static. They're good general rules. The one that is more consistent, though, is the shoulder blade. That you're going to see, and this does not have the movement in it that the leg does. Right. And it's something nobody's ever used this as a reference. I shouldn't say nobody has. I haven't seen it. That's a major reference for me.
Yeah. So, Kenny, let me just say, just to give you a little feel for the flavor, Brian, and we'll get into viewer comments next, unless Kenny's got something else we want to cover. But Joe Tenney says, I'm in too much awe to ask a question. So that's what I was hoping for on this. It's just good stuff. Kenny?
Yeah, I mean, this is awesome. And what I want to say is, Brian, we brought you on, although we focus on tracking wounded game with dogs. Yep. But the other side of that is we want to educate the trackers, and there's hunters that view this also, but we want to educate the trackers so that they can go in the field and educate the hunters. And you here educating us to be able to do that, I really appreciate it.
I do too.
I tell you what, I'm excited. I got a tool, hopefully in the works, not in the makes, for you guys in the future. The deer that I'm sculpturing, you see this one over here with all the backbones in it, all this?
Yep.
I am going to hopefully do a video on the deer that I'm sculpturing. It's going to be a Reinhardt target. It's going to have my patent, a lot of these things that I can't quite reveal now that are going to be in it to help them shoot it. But I already talked to Matt about this. I'm going to try this is my theory. I have not done this. I want to take the deer, cut out the thorax cavity here with a chainsaw when it's done. So just picture an archery target, except it's going to be anatomically on the money.
Yes.
Then hollowed out. And then all you guys got to do is get the right size deer. You just get the ribs like that. I'll do a video showing you how I do it. And you'll actually have a deer with the ribs. And hopefully, if I can figure out how to do this, I can reproduce some of these organs. So you could actually get them and you'd actually have this life-size model they could see on one side that they could actually buy and shoot it. And yet on the other side, they get to see all the details of all the anatomy on the other side.
See,
that way this can go around the country.
I want that because, I do, I've done it once, but I'll end up doing it more, a hunter-facing presentation. And I don't have much of an anatomy section in there because I don't feel like I'm really qualified to do that. But if we was able to get something like that, and anything I do anatomy-wise is going to just echo what I've learned from you. I mean, that would be awesome.
Do you want to go ahead and just take this now?
Yeah, no kidding.
Well, remember,
Yeah, no kidding.
all I am is I'm the sculptor. I really don't have any say so in the business. It's up to me to talk Reinhardt into saying he can sell some of these, but I'm sure. Let me show you one other thing you guys probably haven't seen. My wife is saying, show him this, show him this. You want to help me show him this here? Do you see that guy there, that bear?
Oh yeah.
That's a bear that's in the works. Now, where's that at, Doris? Can you see it?
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Oh yeah.
And on this, all these ribs, this lung, all this comes out here. This is the complete skeleton of that bear. This is the rib cage on this side. You see that little bit of meat there? That's where the broadhead came out. If I take this all apart, in fact, I think if I can get in there, I could probably take that out. It all comes out. This is going to be mounted. We just put some fur there quick, but hopefully by July, this will be mounted. You see that there? You see a little bit of meat there? That's exactly where the arrow came in. This is exactly where it came out. That's actual meat from those ribs there. They're put back together. We got all the bones, all this put back together. And we've got this bear on video being shot. So you'll actually be able to see the live video and then see where it's reproduced.
Put those lungs back in there a second, buddy. I've never shot a bear. I've never hunted bear. I've never been around bear. I know bear anatomy is different, but I am stunned at how tiny the lungs are up around that front leg.
And
that is the difference. You want to grab the other ones? I'll give you a lesson right now that'll show you. This bear was 235 pounds with the guts in it. The other deer that she's going to show you the ribs of is a 2.5-year-old Montana deer, which is probably 140, 150 pounds dressed.
Right in front.
And I'll try to, let me try to, this will really show you the difference. When I put these front to front, let me go over there in front of the deer door. So, well, if I can hold it, it's a little difficult. Can you see those there, guys?
Hold up.
Hard to see the deer in your left hand, but yeah.
Let's go out here in front of the other deer doors. Okay. Jacob, to show you this right. Why don't you come here, Doris? You go over here, Jacob. Doris.
Okay.
You come over there. You hold that there. What I want you to look at is the first rib. You see the size difference in the front?
Oh yeah.
You'll see all the debate about shooting bears back farther in the middle of the middle. No, you shoot them up front. They say the lungs go back farther on a bear. They're not you hear all these different things. The reality is it's very similar to a deer, except they're so pointed in the front, you just don't have the height. See how much smaller it is?
Right.
So that's another reason to shoot back farther on a bear. The lungs are bigger, farther back. So on this particular bear, we've got 3 different arrows where they were shot, where they came through, that we have documented on video. So isn't that interesting?
I'm fascinated by it. I mean, I'm just fascinated by it all. Wow. Cool. Brian, do you have time for us to hang on as we roll through some of these viewer questions and comments?
Oh, I would love. Remember, I like to be put on the spot. I want to see if somebody can prove me wrong.
Okay, so
I like those broadhead controversy ones.
That is a challenge to our listeners. Throw respectful and appropriate for the theme of the night, but throw Brian a thoughtful, intellectually thought through question that would offer a challenge. But let's walk through some of these questions, Kenny. And some of it won't be all about this, but Kenny, Matt Lord asked how the new multi-dog tests are going so far.
Yeah, going great. If you go back and watch last week's or listen to it on the podcast, we go over it. We did not do any of this last event. We did them at the Duval Catahoula's event in Louisiana. Randy Duval actually ran 3 out of the 4 tests, and his friend Perry was the other one. Actually, it was Perry's daughter, Gia, ran the other one.
Yeah, and I still want to talk to Gia. Wesley Bivens is looking forward to the training series for sure. So again, that'll kick off next week. We'll start that multi-part training series, which should be pretty good with obedience and heck, tracking itself could be a multi-part series. But Kenny, you're the trainer, so I'll shut up about all of that. Let's see, Kenny, if you see one, just let me know that you want to really call out. And Shannon tells you to check your messenger. I'm sure you've seen that stuff by now, Kenny. That was early on.
Yes, the one right below him.
Yeah, I was getting ready to pull that up. This is my friend Calvin. Calvin is works in emergency. He's paramedic. So Calvin says, this is when we were talking about lungs and all of that. He said, depends on what capillaries, veins, arteries, and other parts of the lungs were hit. It's not just a lung. It's not just a lung as a lung, but have many portions to them. There are several parts to it coming from someone in the medical field, and Calvin is indeed in the medical field. Any comments to that, Kenny or Brian?
Amen.
Yep. Let's see. Oh, hey, just real quick, talking about the double lung. If you can't, Joe Sellers, if you can't breathe, you die. Yep, I suppose
That's
you do.
true.
Here's another one from Calvin.
That's one I was fixing to touch.
Oh, that's what you're talking about? The body has...
I was going to touch on that one whenever you're done.
Okay, yeah. The body has mechanisms to combat certain situations, and collapsed lungs do not necessarily kill you.
That's true. And another thing with a deer is, especially in the fall around rut time, deer have high levels of vitamin K1, K2, which is a super clotting agent.
Yep.
A lot of people doesn't know that. And also they produce endorphins, which is basically they produce their own painkillers, their own morphine. You put that combination together, they're a walking trauma center.
Yep. The other comment on the lungs is when you say the lungs collapse, they're not like a balloon. They're inflated. They go down. They partially collapse. They can totally collapse. They can go down a little bit. Then the air can come back in. There's different degrees of it. There's 4 different types. They're called a pneumothorax. There's 4 different types of pneumothorax. So again, you get into the weeds, it gets more complicated than this, but
the positive and negative pressure.
Yes. And they're fighting each other all the time.
Yep.
Yeah. And so I want to bring Joe's up because I'm right there with Joe. Go deep. I can listen to this all night. He was the one that I brought up earlier, where he says he's in too much awe to even ask a question. So I kind of am too. Brian, I told you, I got goosebumps right now. I love this stuff so much. If you see one, can you let me know? Let's see.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, let me pull this cover.
Want to know what his Facebook page is.
Yeah. The Anatomy Hunter, right, Brian, on Facebook?
Yes.
The Anatomy Hunter. You can search. Just search the Anatomy Hunter. You'll find it. Click follow. I did. You'll see these models that is behind Brian, and we just walked through. You will see them in his reels and his videos. You can also go to the Anatomy Hunter on Facebook, and there is a plethora of fantastic viewing there. Collectively hours worth of great videos on his YouTube page, The Anatomy Hunter. Just search The Anatomy Hunter and get your coffee. So Kenny, you kind of touch. Maybe you want to touch on this one, Matt Lord. So the benefits of pushing compared to waiting, we sort of touched on that.
Yeah, it's almost always better to wait.
Yep. Just from, like you said, you never know what you're going to run into. You can run them off property. You can, and every time you jump a deer, your odds of recovering them go down. Maybe a little bit less off lead particularly multi dogs. But yeah.
Well, here's the reality of it. a dead deer doesn't go far.
Nope,
It doesn't go anywhere.
doesn't go anywhere.
If you give it time to expire, it's not going to go anywhere. And if you have a wounded deer and you push it, well, guess what you just did? You extended that declining health, wounded scent trail further. You're pushing it further. Well, what does that do? That makes a longer trail through the woods for predators to come across.
100%.
Most of the time, no matter where you hit it, most of the time that deer's going to go a couple 100 yards and lay down. If it's a lethal shot.
Yes.
You push it, you're just asking for trouble all the way around.
Yep. And bear with me a second here. I'm going to post the link to the Facebook page in the comments. Joe has asked and others, so I'm just going to put it in there, and you guys can get it right out of these comments. Because I do highly encourage folks to follow and listen. Like I said, I have dubbed Brian's work as my only trusted source for anatomy. So there you go, Joe. I just posted it in the comments. Kenny, like I said, if you see one, holler. We'll pull it up. Dylan Major. This one's shaping up to be as good as I expected. I love Brian's work. Yep, Dylan's a friend of mine. I agree. Randall Duvall says, just had a heated discussion with Axel. We tell hunters to shoot mid-mass. We'll recover that deer dead or alive. Axel's argument was shoot the leg. That's way more fun, Dad. Axel is his dog. That was said in jest because dogs like to chase, but no, we don't advocate shooting legs.
Publicly? No. No, I'm joking.
We've talked about the frontal shot already.
Here's one
Travis
from Michael.
Goldman.
Michael
What's
Beck
that?
says, well, there's one from Michael Beck down here that says back is better than forward, low is better than high.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, from a dog tracker's perspective and likely to die, absolutely. I would much rather hear the deer was hit back, Brian, similar to what we talked about, rather than forward and shoulders and humerus and whatnot. I thought there was a couple.
Is that like a back and low Texas heart shot?
No, no, not an advocate.
That hadn't been brought up yet. Now we gave him an idea to make a sculpture of a Texas heart shot.
Yeah. There's your assignment, Brian. Add it to your list. Let's see here.
I was fishing, by the way, with a Canadian who's going to take me bear hunting this next spring last weekend, and he showed me a moose that he did a Texas heart shot with.
Oh, wow. Geez.
Yeah, I had to just the fletching sticking out, and it was still alive and ended up attacking him.
Wow.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah,
he probably
of a bull moose.
Wow. I want to bring this one up. I saw it when he posted it. Alan Barrett asked, so what, Brian, when we were talking about the fire hydrant shot, take a sharp knife to the top of the fire hydrant. So, and it's hard to cut even on a tailgate. So how hard is it to cut with a broadhead?
Well, the answer to that is how sharp is your broadhead?
Yep.
Easy. Easy.
I will tell you this. I not intentionally, but I hit a deer a little bit forward with my bow. And I watched that thing go down within 40 yards. I thought it was a great shot because he went down within 40 yards. But it was farther forward than I would have preferred. And I really wasn't sure why it went down so fast. I know now. I hit that major aorta right there. And he just didn't have, there wasn't a ton of blood because he didn't go anywhere, but he was down in a second, man. And that's why I hit that. I hit the fire hose coming out of the fire hydrant.
Now, one thing to note, do you remember one of the comments earlier? It was you shoot back and low is better than back and high. This will give you, if you go to my YouTube channel, I don't know if we have that on there, but it's called Gavin's Doe. It's one of the things that we had to show. But anyway, he hit low, just missed the heart by a little bit, angled back, and he hit the liver. And that's where, when the lungs during the breathing process, when they come forward, because that's another thing we didn't get into as far as the lungs, as far as their size and where that, they come forward. The farthest part of the lungs, if you shoot back, is right under the backbone. So literally, if you're shooting back farther and you want to double lung them, you actually shoot high. And that is anatomically 100% guaranteed. I know that throws a monkey wrench into it, but a lot of these things, guys, that we're bringing up tonight, we're just touching on things. And depending on where we go with this going forward, we can get into more details. And hopefully it's going to be the great thing, Lonnie, is I'm going to be with Matt this fall. And if we can shoot some deer and his property there, he invited me on his property, we will actually inflate the lungs and do this live time there. So you're going to have footage on deer that lived on your property. That's right. I need people to shoot some deer that we can do this.
Yeah. So I guess just to give a little bit of color to that. There's a couple more comments here. Folks, Brian has been trying to get on, tag along with trackers to find deer and document where it was hit and what organs were damaged and all that. He's having a hard time getting connected, and understandably so, because trackers, when it gets busy, it is full tilt boogie 24/7 almost. So it's really hard. But I invited Brian, if he wanted to come to Michigan, our tracking network here, the Michigan Deer Tracking Network, which I'm a member of, and Calvin is, Set Hunter Tracker, who commented a couple times here. We can get you on as many tracks as you want to go on between the 45 tracking teams in our network. And you said you wanted to hunt. I said, zero problem. I've got 80 acres and too many deer. I don't hunt much. Shoot all you want. My son-in-law is going to love to hunt with you. So that's what that come down to. And now I'm even more inspired and motivated, knowing that we can get some science and some learnings and some education and stuff that we can use to propel our mission of education, man. I get so inspired by this stuff.
Yeah. And feel free to come on down to North Florida, and we get so many tracks, and we can go do some flats fishing.
Oh, wow. Now just so you know, that's what this is all about for me personally. He's traveling, being able to hunt and fish, part of the deal. I don't want to end up doing seminars. Like you just give a seminar and you talk. No. I want to be into hunting and fishing, because my wife and I will be married 50 years this July, and we have worked 6 days a week for 49 and a half years. Yep. And so I'm going to be 69 years old. So I'm running out of time. And all I did when I was in my taxidermy, I was a taxidermist. That's how I started all this. All I would do is hear other people's stories. And it's still what I'm doing now. I don't get it. Like I said, I shot one buck. I've seen one buck in 2 years where I live hunting. Part of it's I don't have much time in the predators. So to do all this, that's the stuff I want to do. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And the nice thing about, if you go down and visit Kenny, which I would encourage you to do, they're in North Florida, their season runs longer and it's nicer. So you can get on plenty of tracks when the season's petering out up here and get on and wear your t-shirt and catch fish.
But I got a question for Kenny though, Kenny, and that's this. What do you have for hogs down there?
You can come take as many as you want. We have 22,000 acres that you are welcome to take all of them you want.
But can you actually archery hunt them? Like in Texas, they don't archery hunt hogs that much.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You can definitely archery hunt them.
You put bait out and they'll come in?
Oh yeah.
Because when I was down there in Texas, I had a hard time. Everybody shoots them out of, with thermals at night, or they use dogs and stick them with a knife, and I just love hunting hogs. I don't know. My wife thinks I'm crazy, but I just had a blast hunting them with my bow.
Oh no, we'll make it happen.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah. Definitely do that, Brian. And let me know. I might have to join you.
Come on.
Yes. Yeah. There we go.
So, Ansley, we did talk about frontal shots. If you go back and watch this, I'm not sure when you joined. I think it was after we had our frontal conversation. That model that you see of that rib cage between the two things over Brian's right shoulder right now is what we use to model that. And we explained why it is. That's it right there. Why it's so horrible. It's such a tiny little area. The rib taper arrows deflect. If you're lucky, you might get one. If you're lucky, you'll get both lungs and you'll see it go down. If not, you get one lung. It's just bad. I've never recovered one.
Yeah. You see that a little bit there on the front? Is that a little bit better, Matt?
Yeah. Yep.
But I think that space.
Yeah. Here, hold on, Brian. Let me bring that up in solo layout so it's bigger for everybody to see. It's a little bit hard to tell in this full model.
Yeah, but let's get the whole deer. Yeah, then they'll see it better.
Yeah,
right there, it clearly shows that if I don't encourage it, if you do shoot it, you need to get on that side of that liver.
Oh yeah, that's a great point, Kenny. So if you do get one lung, hopefully you get enough penetration to get a liver, and then you got a recoverable deer.
Yeah, which means you need to
get the liver.
If you're going to take that shot, it has to be on the right side of that deer where you have a chance, better likelihood of hitting that liver.
Right there. Do you see it right there?
Yep.
This will give you a view of, as I turn this, if I've got it right, I'm behind the camera, of when you see what sits right in the middle is this glenohumeral joint right there. So that's the one when they take the shot, they have to determine, do they shoot on the inside of it there? And then when you come at that angle there, you're right torn. And then when you get behind it, it's there. But that's why actually having the models show people, so then they see it, they can get it in their mind. It's not just somebody telling them something.
Yeah, I completely agree with that for sure. More comments like this is interesting stuff. Joe Tenney's commented like 3 times on that, Joe, and I'm completely with you.
I think we need to go down while he's right there. We need to go down to Joe Tenney. He says, "Can you show us on that liver where it bleeds bright red or bright blood and dark blood?"
No, I can tell you what I tried to find out, why does the liver have that colored blood? And all I've been able to find out is it bleeds more of the color of the liver because the liver is that color. And you ask why, they say because the liver is saturated with blood. But that to me doesn't explain why it makes it that color. But the liver is fed. I know if I'm hey guys, the liver is the only organ I understand that is fed by both a vein and an artery. It's fed with an artery that comes right up out of the heart back here, and then it's fed from the vein comes from the intestines. Now,
yes,
here's the interesting point. I'll take this out. All the blood vessels come through on the inside here because the liver is attached to the diaphragm right here. And all the blood vessels come through the diaphragm in here, and they attach to it here. So if you hit the liver on the inside, in the middle of the deer there, you're going to hit all the great big veins and arteries going through here. The farther to the outside you hit, it becomes flatter. It's not as thick. And the blood vessels get smaller and smaller to the outside. So a hit that hits right here could have major blood loss in that. And you know, I'm sure you've seen gut shot hit through the liver and they die real fast. That's because you hit a major blood vessel in there. So again, knowing the anatomy, hitting as close to the dead middle of the deer as you can, because this liver fits right into the dead middle. And this here is kind of a crazy deal. This is called the caudad liver lobe that comes off the liver, and it's designed perfectly by God to cradle the kidney right above it.
Wow.
Hits are just perfect. And all of this comes in right when you take the tenderloins out of a deer when you got a deer, that all comes together right at that exact point. So that's the juncture between the diaphragm and the liver.
And you know, when it comes to the different blood colors, I've always interpreted it as very much what you just said, Brian, is there's a great big fat hepatic artery that's come in. Arteries supply blood. They're the supply line, which is highly oxygenated. Then there's a whole bunch of smaller veins and that another big vein, I forget what it's called, but that's coming in supply. That is deoxygenated blood. So oxygenated blood is brighter, oxygen rich. Deoxygenated blood is darker, and there's more veins in the liver than artery. So that's how I've always considered the difference. And am I right? I think so.
No, you're not.
Tell me why. Tell me why then.
Well, I've always been told, and again, this is where I'm trying to document this, that as the blood leaves the heart, it's full of oxygen.
Yeah.
It goes through the body, gets rid of the oxygen, it comes back. And that's why on your arms, you see all this blue here, because deoxygenated blood, which is venous blood, is blue in color. You cut yourself right there, you're going to have red blood right away. They'll say that's because it hit oxygenated air, it turned blood. The reason it's blue there is because the sheath of the vein is blue, not because of the blood underneath.
So what
that's
you're
just
saying
from the medical field. I do not understand the different colors of blood. Because I've the trackers that I've gone with, I've asked them, and what they've told me is what I've got is blood is overrated. You got blood all over the place. You don't find the deer. You got another deer. You got a drop or two of blood, and there it is laying there, because there's external blood, internal bleeding. Everybody claims that lung blood is pink, and I've shot a lot of deer and through the lungs, and I've seen their blood. And I have seen pink when it frosts on the outside of, like after they're dead, you come up there, it'll turn pink. But the blood to me is, and I don't think I'm colorblind, it's red, it's a mist, and it's got bubbles in it. You know, which is actually just from the pressure of it being shot out is what the veterinarians tells me what causes the bubbles that are in there, not actually from the lungs, from the air. Because I've seen one hit in the femoral artery in the back leg, and it was full of bubbles. And it just happens to do with just air, like anything mixing with
we commonly refer to them as friction bubbles. You know, they hit the ground and splash, or
yeah,
stuff
I don't
like
know.
that.
I have a lot of questions. I don't understand the different colors. I do understand liver blood is darker like that. The liver is that color, but why that is, from what I've read, doesn't make sense to me, because it's concentrated blood. Well, why would something concentrated end up darker? You know, it's 100% concentrated in your blood vessels. So, but blood is not blue as a result of being deoxygenated. That much physiologically, if you read on that, you'll find that out. That's a myth.
Yeah. So going back to the bubbles,
yeah.
You know, when you talk about lung blood, in the frothiness, those bubbles are very small, and that frothiness from the tiny particles of oxygen is what makes it look the pink in color. Where when you look at a shoulder shot deer, where you see the bright red blood with large bubbles in it, which people often think they lung shot it because they see these big bubbles in it. It's nothing but the friction blood. If you don't see that frothiness that we refer to as pink, it's probably a friction a high shoulder is typically what we see that on.
See, this is so great for me. I've never heard that term before. You call it friction bubbles? Is that what you call it?
Yeah.
Friction blood?
Friction bubbles.
Yeah, it'll just be
bubbles
it'll be
splash
larger bubbles in the blood,
Okay.
which we typically see from a high shoulder hit.
That's that's really interesting to me.
Yeah,
So,
and I'll see probably 30, 40 of those a year.
by the way, an interesting comment that I'm trying to think on, a guy that's killed more animals, I got to watch his name because he's very famous. He told me, and just check this comment, the quickest kill there is for him on a deer is a high lung shot. Very interesting. And I thought about that. Why would that be? And I have a theory of it. And I believe this is my theory, is if they die from lung collapse, they are getting in there. The biggest area, the volume of where the lungs are the widest, if the air can collapse, get in there and collapse the widest part of the lungs, that's going to allow that much more air in the thorax cavity. And each individual cavity is called the pleural cavity. So that is going to allow that much more air to put that much more pressure, to put the pressure on the lungs and the heart to have it collapse the quickest. That's interesting. Now, I don't know that that's true, but when this guy says it, he's got experience, and he's the guy that will not shoot forward. He's really behind me because I don't advocate that heart shot because of the bones. So he's totally with me, and he shoots farther back, but he's a rage guy. So he goes big. That's his how he plays that card there. So, but that's interesting.
That rolls into another question I saw about the wide cut. Brian Weissong says, how much inertia do you think these 2-inch mechanical broadheads lose upon impact of a rib or leg bone? And do you think it might decrease the recovery rate of the mechanical broadheads?
2 questions, 2 answers. One, as far as the energy, check out Joel Maxfield. He is going to tell you that in exact detail and has tremendous experience. The other one we've already answered. When you're dealing with bones, it's not going to penetrate as much.
Yeah, which goes to Lyle's comment right above that, says, let's talk penetration depth.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Anything that detracts from penetration, it puts you at risk from extending a recovery or whatever. Penetration is king, as well as what you hit. Don't get me wrong, but you see what I'm saying. I mean, anything, those big 2 inchers, it's physics. We didn't invent it. It just is going to, it's going to take away from penetration. A lot of deer killed with them.
The argument on the other side of the coin is if you do shoot back and you get a liver or gut shot, intestines, anything back there, and you've got the power, so the kinetic energy you lose, you've got it to lose, the odds of hitting more and causing more mass hemorrhaging with something, the bigger the cut. I know a guy that's got a broadhead that's 4 inches. 4 inches. He gave it to me.
That's cartoonishly large. I saw Kenny shake his head, and I'm kind of with him. But you're right. Yeah, a 4-inch hole through the guts, of course, it's going to kill quicker. Sure. That's nasty. But it's just the risk is so great in my dog tracking perspective.
Sure.
Here's one for you, Brian. Brian, do you only study archery side, or is there any studies on bullet effects to the animal? James Tucker asks.
That is a weakness I have. I am an archery guy. This does have to correspond into guns, but that gets into, shock and other things that are outside I'm an archery hunter. I'm crippled in my shoulder and I should use a crossbow, but I'm bound and determined to do everything I can to use a bow because that's just how I'm wired. I just love archery. So, but it is a flaw in the anatomy hunter that needs to, as this go on, I need to have other people that are into that to work with to help me bridge into that.
But at the end of the day, the anatomy is the anatomy, no matter what you hit it with. If you hit it in the right spot.
Yep, that doesn't change. That's right.
That's right. And Brian, I wouldn't call it a flaw in the anatomy hunter. I would just call it an area of opportunity for you, an opportunity.
Oh, you are such. I was thinking about you today. You are almost too nice of a guy. You're just a nice guy. The positive speaking guy. There you go.
Yeah, I have a hard time finding much flaw. I can also be a bit of a sycophant and obnoxious when I'm inspired, right, Kenny?
Hey, I don't see anything wrong with it. I'm the same way.
Yeah. Kenny, any comments that we missed you want to jump on before we go? We're going on 2.5 hours here. We're going to
No, I just honestly, I just want to say thank you. And, I'd love to do a follow-up schedule something else because you alluded to there's more you would like to share at another time. And we're already, like you said, at almost 2.5 hours.
Yeah, I'd like to be able to get in specifics and stuff, and it would be neat. Here's a challenge for you guys. If we could play some video clips, because I don't see why we're looking at each other. If you could play a video clip of some deer being shot and then going through and actually, like what I told you, this one that was shot everybody thinks a shot in the heart and it was shot in the liver. Well, some of those things for your viewers to actually see that and then go through what I'm doing, because my whole deal for doing this is to get people to remember, I need people to send me videos. And so what I'm going to be working on is making a video that'll be specifically for you dog trackers. So you can go and get the evidence that I need so we can make little mini shows with some of the deer that you've harvested. They're going to be very unique and very interesting. But what happens every time somebody sends me stuff, it's the quality is not good enough. Like you've got to see where the arrow went in the deer. Well, first off, when the deer is dead, the skin covers up the hole. So it's hard sometimes to even find the hole. So you got to put an arrow or a stick in it to show where it was. You got to bring the leg back like it's alive straight down. The shoulder always droops. So you kind of got to push it up. And you've got to take all the photographs, because what I'm trying to do is get a photograph where the arrow went in that somebody can take the live deer or the dead deer where it was shot, and they can correspond where that is on the live deer. So if it's just a limp deer there with a hole in it, like my daughter shot one in the top of the heart, and by the time the photo was taken, it make it look like she barely hit it above the belly. Completely different than when you replay it when it was shot actually on video.
Now that's interesting that you bring that up, because how often do we recover a deer and we look at the shot placement on the dead deer, and in reality, it's not even what you think it is.
Oh, it's off 2-3 inches sometimes. Yes.
So we aspire for hunters to be as close as 2 or 3 inches.
Well, what we need to do, if this progresses and it's the interest of you guys as we go along with this, but then by fall, I'll help to make a video that you guys would approve. That would be so people could get this information. That would be extremely helpful. And I want to make it so my documentation would be like a library. So as you sit down with a cup of coffee and you could type in, say, gut shots, shoulder shots, whatever it is there that somebody just shot, they came back, they want to know what to do. They could go to the site and they could watch a whole library list of these, and then having all the facts of what actually took place, the broadhead, how far that it went, what the blood trail was, what it actually hit when it was done, how long it took the animal to die. But I want it documented so it's not my opinion. Just like when I showed you I told you about the lungs on these 2 animals that were shot, where they weren't hit in the lungs and they should have been. That's documented. I can prove that. I can't explain it, but I've at least got the documentation there, and that hopefully as time goes on, I'll learn more.
Yeah, for sure. We'll talk. In fact, we're going to sign off here, Brian. When we do, just hang with us a minute and we'll debrief here.
Okay.
But this has been a long one, man. We're 2 hours and 22 minutes, jam-packed full of fantastic stuff, and we could easily go another 225 with every bit as much of intrigue and detail. So I do want to do a follow-up, Brian. So start, just as Kenny says, start doing the mental gymnastics and making notes of the things that you would like us to know and things that you would like to cover on a follow-up stream. We'll set that up, and timing, we'll just have to see what that looks like. but there is certainly there's certainly more for us to glean from your work, and we want to glean that work, that stuff.
Just remember, I have way, way, way more to glean from you two than you do from me.
Well, we appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, we're all in it together to help animals be harvested and killed and not wounded and lost.
That's right.
That
Yeah,
is
that's
our
what this is all about.
That
That's
is
right.
our mission. You know,
Yes.
to that point, shameless plug, and then we'll sign off, but shameless plug for the Michigan Deer Tracking Network. 44 teams recovered over 1,200 animals. And Kenny, I know you guys are recovering those same, you know, in that same order of magnitude, maybe more, but that's pretty good, man. That's a lot of deer that ostensibly would not have been recovered. And bear. So we're real proud of it. There is conservation in dog tracking, and there's great lessons to be learned in fully understanding true anatomy, not cartoon magazine anatomy, true anatomy. And that's really what I appreciate about your work, Brian. So with that, Kenny, any final words?
No, all I can say is I really appreciate this, Brian, and looking forward to the next time.
Absolutely. Brian?
Me as well.
Final thought? Okay. Guys, again, I so appreciate it, man. Kenny and Brian, hang with me a minute here. But you viewers, thanks for listening. Thanks for chiming in with questions. Great content. More of the good, less of the bad. We will talk to you next week. Training streams next week. Talk to you soon, guys.